some days you just got a bunch of stuff you want to talk about. Some days you got like 4 or 5 different topics that you want to cover, and you can boil it down. You can say, oh, we're just going to talk about one thing today. We're going to just talk about this, or we're going to just talk about that. But really when it comes down to it, there's a bunch of stuff to talk about, and maybe none of those individual topics are enough to fill up a whole 20-minute episode of the Morning Pit. So we'll talk about like 4 or 5 of them and see what kind of conversations we can get into, along those lines, and see what comes up and what we have to say about a few of those things. So we got a bunch of stuff coming up. The plan for June, because June is right around the corner. I mean, tomorrow's the 31st. This weekend starts the new month, and it's the biggest month of the year when it comes to recruiting. So there's a lot to talk about in that regard. You can see the headline up at the top there. If I can point in the right direction, Pitt announced the jersey numbers for the newcomers on the basketball squad. And you might say, is there really anything to talk about when it comes to basketball jersey numbers? Yeah, there's a couple things. There's a couple things we'll point out. And, the new Rivals250, the top 250 prospects in the recruiting class of 2025 was released yesterday. And no, Pitt doesn't have anybody on the list, but there are some other things to look at, like, how many guys from Pennsylvania, how many guys from Western Pennsylvania, how many guys are going to the ACC. There's some interesting things to dig into there as well. So let's cover a bunch of topics, the old Pitt-Pourri here on a Thursday edition of the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's the Pitt-Pourri. You like that confetti for the Pitt-Pourri? Credit to our friend Jim Snyder, the old publisher, the former publisher, I should say, of Panther-Lair.com, way back in the day. The guy who hired me at the beginning of it all to write for Panther-Lair.com. He came up with Pitt-Pourri. It was his weekly notes column. Each week of the football season, just sort of relevant notes about Pitt and stats and numbers and things like that. And he called it Pitt-Pourri. I always thought it was moderately clever, and so we're using it here today as we cover a bunch of topics. You know what we always ask you to do, of course, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you won't miss any of our Pitt video content, like the live stream we did last night with me and Jim Hammett, or these daily Morning Pit videos that we do every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.Rivals.com. I guess we could start with the basketball jerseys. That's first on my list. They released the new jersey numbers yesterday for the newcomers, the 5 scholarship guys, and then the one the walk-on from Hampton. Amni Njai coming in, the freshman, the native of Senegal, 6'10", 210-pound forward, going to play center. He's going to wear 0. He's taking over that 0 number. I should have had this up here. I don't think anybody wore 0 last year. Nelly Cummings wore it 2 years ago, but I don't think there was anybody who wore 0 for Pitt last year. No, 0 was an unassigned number, so that's a new one. Njai is going to take that one. Damian Dunn, the transfer coming in from Houston, he's going to wear number 1. Again, nobody wore number 1 last year. That's a unique number. Dunn actually wore number 1 at Temple when he started his career playing for the Owls. When he transferred to Houston, he changed his number to 11 because 1 was sort of occupied by Jamal Sheed, who was pretty good. I guess you can defer to him and let him keep his number 1. Dunn doubled up. He made the Larry Fitzgerald move and went from 1 to 11. Dunn is back to number 1. That's another number that wasn't being worn last year. And Dunn and 1. I like the rhyme there. And I think you know what we think about Damian Dunn, 6'5" guard. He's big. He's physical. A little bit of Jamarius Burton in his game, and I think a guy who's going to contribute a lot this year. He's going to play a lot, and he's going to be a big part of this team. The number 2 jersey was taken last year. It's available now, and Cam Corrin is going to take that one. He wore something else at Florida State. I forgot what he wore, like 25 or something, or maybe that was just how many points he scored against Pitt at the Peterson Event Center. But Cam Corrin's going to wear jersey number 2. No, he wore number 3 at Florida State. Excuse me, I forgot. So he's stepping down. He's going down 1 number from 3 to 2, and he'll be sporting the single digit, continuing to sport the single digit at Pitt. Number 3, also another number that wasn't assigned last year. Now it's going to be used by Brandon Cummings. Brandon Cummings coming in as a freshman. It's interesting. I'm not surprised he didn't want to wear zero like Nelly did, like his older brother. I'm not surprised that he wanted to sort of go his own way and forge his own path, all of those kinds of things. So, I guess he'll be making a lot of threes, and he'll hold up the three, and that'll be for his number. Does 3 get anything on the? Nope. I guess 3 doesn't generate any of the graphics, not like 2 does. Wait, you can't see it there. Come on, there's my balloons. I knew they would happen. But yeah, Brandon Cummings wearing number 3. And then Amzil Dalilich, he's picking up the Gary McGee number 52. I was like, when I saw this, that Amzil Dalilich, the 6'7" Bosnian wing who can shoot, when I saw that he was wearing 52, I was trying to think of like, who was the last guy to wear 52? And I went and looked, there have been like 7 of them. But the most recent one was Gary McGee. Back in 2011, he was the last Pitt player to wear number 52. Amzil Dalilich is going to wear that one. You know what's interesting? Last year, the NCAA let players wear numbers beyond 5, right? Because it always used to be, 52, or 25 or whatever. You couldn't wear a number like 6 or 9 or something. But last year they changed that, and Bub Carrington went with 7. But I don't think anybody on Pitt's roster, let me double check just to make sure. I don't think anybody on Pitt's roster is doing that. None of the newcomers. Everybody's still got the numbers that are, both digits are 5 or less. So that was interesting. I thought it was interesting that Bub Carrington went with 7 last year, and it's interesting that nobody's going with anything like that this year. So hoops jerseys. If you want to get your Amzil Dalilich jersey now, that's the number you want to go to. Get out your old Gary McGee number 52 jersey and somehow convert McGee into Dalilich. Maybe you can find a way to do it. I don't know. Listen, June is coming up. All right. I mean, today's the 30th. Tomorrow's the 31st. June 1st on Saturday. It's the beginning of the month. It's the beginning of the biggest recruiting month on the calendar. And it's the beginning of the prospect camps. And there's really 2 big things that, effectively, there's 2 big things that happen. I almost did it again. I almost sent the balloons. There's 2 big things that happen during the month of June. Big recruiting things that happen. And there's prospect camps and there's official visits. And these are the things that are going to be getting going here starting this weekend. The official visits won't be until next week. They'll start the official visits on Thursday, and we'll have a big preview of that coming up next week as we get closer and you get those lists finalized. Where the official visits is when they bring the recruits in, pay for everything, pay for travel, lodging, room and board, food, everything like that. They can stay for, I think, 48 hours. So the guys next week are going to come in on Thursday and stay until Saturday. And they're different from the unofficial visits because on the unofficial visits, the recruit has to pay for everything. On the official visits, the school can pay for everything. And those are big events. I mean, that's a big part of the recruiting process because you talk about the red carpet being rolled out. That's when it really happens. And you see a lot of commitments come out of those official visits because the whole event, the whole experience is designed to be the best possible experience. Like, I mean, there's a running joke of like, have you ever had, an interview or an article about an official visit where the kid said it wasn't good, where they didn't enjoy it or they didn't like it? No, you never see stuff like that. I mean, you might get a lukewarm reception or even a cool reception, but for the most part, these things are planned down to the most minute details and they're executed to a T. And you have people, particularly in the recruiting department at these schools, especially at Pitt. Pitt, I think Pitt is very good at this. At planning out the official visit weekend to give the best possible experience that you can imagine. And a lot of times the result of that is a commitment because, hey, you just had the best weekend of your life living the college lifestyle for 48 hours. Yeah, you want to be part of that and you want to come back there. And so there's 2 big parts to June. There's 2 big things that happen on the recruiting calendar. And there's the official visits. And then there's the prospect camps, and the prospect camps will actually start this weekend. They have one on they have one on Saturday, and then they have more. They have like 3 or 4 throughout the week or throughout the month. Excuse me. And the prospect camps are when Pitt invites like hundreds of kids to come in and work out at their camp, and the camp will go for like 4 or 5 hours. And they'll get coached by Pitt coaches and Pitt players. Pitt players will be, involved as sort of assistant coaches, volunteer coaches. No, they're not volunteer. They actually get paid for it. And because they get paid for it, Pat Narduzzi does some pretty strict evaluations on how the players do in coaching, like how the Pitt players do in being coaches during the event. But they'll get coached by Pitt coaches and obviously get evaluated and seen by Pitt coaches, but also Pitt will invite in coaches from schools at all different levels. They'll have G5 coaches, FCS coaches, D2 coaches, D3 coaches, JUCO coaches, NAIA, all this stuff. I mean, like all over the place. So if you're a high school football player and you go to Pitt's camp, I mean, you might have a dream of playing in the ACC or playing Power 5 football or Power 4 football. But even if you're not at that level, there could be scholarship opportunities for you at these camps because you might find the coach who's at the right level for you, and you could impress him and make connections that could ultimately give you an opportunity to play football in college. So it's a pretty cool event in that regard. In the past, these things have gotten way too big for me, at least. When they have like 400 or 500 kids there, I'm trying to find the 3 guys here that Pitt might possibly recruit out of like 500. This is almost impossible. We'll see if the camps get a little bit smaller this year, but they do tend to get a little bit outrageous in their size. But they're attractive for the kids. I mean, particularly, after the 2021 season, after the ACC championship, I think they became even more attractive. The numbers grew in those last couple of years. We'll see what the numbers look like this year. But this is a big part of the recruiting process. There are offers that go out here. There are guys that Pitt finds at prospect camps that they offer and they end up taking. I mean, you can look at guys. I want to say Mackin-Salves was a camp offer, and not all the camp offers work out, but a lot of them do. I think Jared Wayne was a camp offer. Trying to think of a few other guys. AJ Woods might have been a camp offer. I don't remember exactly if he was. It was right around that period of time when he got his offer from Pitt. But it's a good opportunity for the players to get, for the recruits to get seen by the Pitt coaches, and maybe the Pitt coaches to find a prospect that a guy who stands out to them. And so that starts this weekend. It'll go over the next couple of weekends. They'll have these prospect camps. We'll be there with coverage, as we always are, year after year, covering these camps. But it's a big part of the recruiting process. Maybe not as big as it was 15 years ago. I think there's a lot more access to highlight films, and you can find these things online. You don't have to wait for high school coaches to mail you a DVD. And you don't have to wait to see these guys in person. You can watch anybody's film at any time. And so, I don't know if it's quite as significant as it was, like I say, 15, 20 years ago, but it's still pretty important, and I think there's still a lot that happens at these camps, and, I'm looking forward to it. It's always fun to be out there for camp season. So those are the 2 big recruiting things to watch for in this month coming up, this month of June. The official visits, which ultimately will lead to commitments, and I'm sure there will be a lot of commitments, and then the prospect camps, which could potentially lead to new scholarship offers. So a lot going on. This is the biggest month of the year, and can't wait. Make sure you get all the coverage at Panther-Lair.com. Of course, we're part of the Rivals.com network, and yesterday Rivals released their new top 250 ranking for the class of 2025. These are the guys going into their senior years of high school, coming up here in the fall, and this is the top 250 ranking, the top 250 prospects in the country. Now, as you can imagine, there's thousands of guys playing high school football, thousands of guys going into their senior year of high school football. To narrow it down to 250 is a pretty monumental task, and you're doing it from all 50 states. You're doing it from across the country, and so some states are going to be better represented than others. You might not be surprised to learn that Pennsylvania is not one of them. Not a whole lot of PA representation in this, Rivals 250. As a matter of fact, there's only 7 players from the state, from the Commonwealth, who are listed in the Rivals top 250. Zahir Mathis, number 35, a kid from Imhotep. He's going to Ohio State. He's there, like I say, number 35 in the country. Matt Zollers, the quarterback at Spring Ford, is going to Missouri. He's number 70 overall. Anthony Sacca, the linebacker from St. Joseph's, going to Notre Dame, number 72 in the country. Jabri Coleman, a running back at Imhotep, he's number 125. He's undecided. Maxwell Roy, Also undecided is defensive tackle at St. Joseph's. He's number 148 in the nation. Michael Carroll, an offensive tackle at Central Bucks East. He's undecided. He's number 185 nationally. And then Alex Tash, linebacker at Latrobe, going to Penn State. He's number 190 nationally. Now, if you just listen to me list those 7 guys, the only 7 Pennsylvania players who are in the Rivals 250, you probably noticed something else. Not only are they all from Pennsylvania, but 6 out of those 7 are from the eastern part of Pennsylvania. Only Alex Tash, the kid from Latrobe, is what you would consider a Western PA guy, a Whippeal guy. And I mean, the conversation about the talent level in the Whippeal is an old one. It's a tired one. It's one we've had many times. It's one that's been proven out by the numbers. It's not a falsehood to say that the talent level in the Whippeal has decreased over the years. That's not to say that there are not good players in the Whippeal. There certainly are. Lots of them. But on a national level, the Whippeal in Western PA doesn't put out talent like it did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It's just a concrete cold fact. You know, that it's just the truth. And you see these numbers keep dwindling to the point where right now there's one kid from Western PA in the Rivals 250. And you can say what you want about evaluations and, oh, this ranking's bad or that ranking's bad or whatever. And it's also true that rankings can change by the end of the recruiting cycle, and they will change. Maybe another guy will jump back in, a Tyke Hayes or somebody like that. But for right now, as we sit here entering June after the spring evaluations and camps and all of those kinds of things, there's one. That's not a lot. You know? And it makes it challenging for Pitt. Now, if there were a bunch more in Western PA, I don't know that you would necessarily say, boy, Pitt would get a lot of those guys, because they've struggled recruiting locally for years, whether they're a Rivals 250 prospect or not. But it just says something about the talent level locally that this is all you got. And I think that number will, like I said, I think there'll be 1 or 2 guys who get into that group by the end of the recruiting cycle. But even then, you're only talking about 2 or 3 players out of the top 250 in the nation. That's a dwindling local talent base. Looking at the conference, it probably would not surprise you of which teams in the ACC, including the 3 new additions, Cal, SMU, and Stanford, which of the teams in the ACC currently have a commitment from the Rivals 250. Pitt's not one of them. I can say that. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams in the ACC that do not have a commitment from the Rivals 250. Pitt is one, along with Virginia, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Boston College, NC State, Duke, and Cal. No commitments from the Rivals 250. You wouldn't be surprised, though, at who leads the group. It's Clemson. Clemson has 8 commitments from the Rivals 250. That's got to be up there with some of the most of any team in the country. Miami behind them with 4, and then Florida State with only 3. North Carolina has 2. Louisville and Stanford have 1. SMU has 3. Tied with Florida State. And SMU's 3 commitments from the Rivals 250 are interesting, and it's something to consider and something to think about, and it kind of ties a little bit back to what we were talking about with Pennsylvania, and that there are 7 Rivals 250 members in the state of Pennsylvania, 1 in Western PA, and here's how it ties into it. Okay, SMU has 3 commitments from the top 250. They have number 47 overall, Keelan Russell, a quarterback. Number 206 overall, Dalen Singleton, a wide receiver. And number 236 overall, Sale Reyes, a safety. You know what all 3 of those players have in common? They're all from Texas. They are 3 of the 37 prospects from Texas who rank among the top 250 prospects in the country. 37 out of the top 250 are from Texas. I'm not saying that if there were 37 top 250 prospects in the state of Pennsylvania, Pitt would have 3 of them. I'm not saying that. But it sure helps when you've got that kind of talent local or just in state. And Texas is a big state. but still in state. Now SMU's got some momentum. The move to the ACC is big for them. They're coming off a good season. All this, like they've got a little bit of energy behind their program, and that helps. But it also helps to have the guys in state to choose from. So SMU's sitting there with just as many Rivals 250 commitments as Florida State, and more than North Carolina. Tied for third behind Clemson and Miami in the ACC, and they're all kids from Texas. I don't think you have to dig too deep to find the connective tissue there. It's pretty obvious how that's happening, and it speaks to the value of a talented local recruiting base and a talented in-state recruiting base. It just helps. It helps to have those guys closer. Even if you're not going to get all of them, even if you don't get most of them, it helps to have them closer because you probably have a better chance of getting them if they're here than you do if they're there or like farther away. Even though Pitt has gotten more 4-stars from further away than they have from Western PA in recent years, you get my point. So that's interesting. I think that's a little bit interesting to look at in terms of the caliber of players in the state of Pennsylvania, caliber of players in Western PA, and exactly what's happening around the rest of the ACC. Clemson's killing it. SMU's a bit of a surprise. All right, I think that's good for today. We got the mailbag tomorrow. Don't forget about that. The Morning Pitt mailbag. We'll have that up and going for you. First thing in the morning, if you want to get a question in, the time to do it is right now. Go to the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, the Between Fifth and Forbes message board. We're taking your questions for this week's mailbag. We got a few questions left over from last week. We'll get the rest. We'll get those, and then whatever questions we can that are posted this week. So if you have a question you want to ask, anything about Pitt football, basketball, recruiting, ask it now on the Between Fifth and Forbes message board at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.Rivals.com, and that way you can get your question in. So thanks for tuning in today. I appreciate it. Make sure you like this video and subscribe. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.Rivals.com. Have a great Thursday. We will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.